All right, so we've got this Lenovo laptop. It's in decent shape, except looking inside the charge ports, you got clear signs of pin damage to those connectors, both of them. And obviously we're taking a look at this device because it's not charging. So something you can do is take a device like this and we can plug it on in if you can't tell if there's any damage, and it will run a test and it'll tell us if it recognizes anything wrong with the port. So here in a second, we'll come back with an open line. And the CC1 is also an open line, which it shouldn't be. And you can see we've got all of these other open lines, but this D plus is necessary. And then we can actually go over and plug it into the second one, and it'll immediately run another test. And we'll see what the results are of that, how they differ. And let's see what it says. We got a bunch of missing stuff, values that are out of whack. So let's open this up and I'm going to show you how to replace one of these ports. We'll start by removing the surrounding screws on the back. Once those screws are all loose and free, we can then pop up the back panel and slide it off. These little screws have like this little washer, so you can just leave them intact and they're not going to go anywhere on you. Now we have this whole motherboard to deal with. First things first, let's disconnect the battery. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and remove the battery from the housing. That way it's not in my way at all with the flex cables. And just like that, the battery comes out. And now we got a bunch of screws around the motherboard that we need to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and take the time to do that. Alright, so we've got basically everything disconnected and the screws out. We'll need to gently flip this over because the board is still attached to the keyboard. So you don't want the board to flop down too hard, but we're going to go ahead and pop the keyboard. For that, we'll take a tool and we'll just pop up these keys here. Just like that. Pop right up with just a little flick. And then we'll twist these screws here, both of them. And then you may need a spudger or something. Sometimes you think the screw's out enough, but it's not yet. And the keyboard will come up, and then you can slide it out. And this will allow us access to the cables so that we can flip up the little flaps and slide out the two connectors. And we'll set the keyboard aside. Now when we flip this back over, we should be able to take out the whole motherboard. I totally forgot to pull out the tray here. Luckily I wasn't prying on it too hard. We'll get our little ejector and pop that out. Alright, now out comes the motherboard. And now we can go and address this Type-C charge port. And I just realized after close inspection, these aren't compatible. So we're going to pop off this one and do it first. The new port for this is quite unique because you've got your double road Type-C port. And then you've got these through-hole pins for this other port here, and a couple through holes for the legs. So it's a little bit of a complicated one to do, but it's totally doable, and I'm going to show you how I do it. The first thing that I'm going to do is isolate the area with some Kapton tape. I don't want to overheat any of these chips or melt any of the plastics. Alright, so I built up a few layers of Kapton tape there. Gotta bring that up. And we might as well pop this one off while we are popping this one off because we're going to be subjecting the entire motherboard to heat. All right, I'm going to come in from below with some hot air and move back and forth into this area. I'll give it a nice heating. We'll come in first for this one. Basically, I'm looking for some movement, and then I can lift it without pulling any pads. And then we'll heat up this area. And this one's trickier just because of its size. That's why I don't have a reduction nozzle on at this point in time. And I'm constantly moving it back and forth so I'm not underheating any area. And it'll pop off like that. We'll let this cool down and then I'll show you what we'll do with that area. Probably under the microscope. Alright, so we have this through right here. Looks like we've got 14 through holes right there. We've got the two legs that'll be on this side. We've got our Type-C here and the other two legs. So really what I need to do is clear out all of the through-hole areas, and we can apply solder later to those. But I don't want to melt any of the plastics in the connector. So I'm going to start by adding low melt to all of these holes so I can easily wick them out. We'll add some flux first. And the ones on the end, for example right here, I could probably wick them with just the iron tip. Let's see. If I take the wick and I carefully go over this hole, I'm patient enough. You can see I'm really close to getting all of the solder out of there, but it's not having it. And it might sound counterintuitive, but we're going to add solder so that we can remove solder. We'll add the solder. This is a 138 solder paste. Add this to the legs. And now you'll see if we go back in on that same hole and I try to wick it up, I can actually clear the whole hole. Or close to it. I'll go back in and get the rest of that. We'll probably just do a quick time lapse of me going over all of these joints so you can get an idea of how much work it is. So stick with me to the end. Alright, so what we've got to do now is add some solder to all of the pads for this Type-C that's in the big port. There's a couple ways to do this. One is just with the soldering iron. What I'm going to do is just go over the area with some solder on the tip and try to make fairly even and consistent pillows of solder. But it's not perfect. It's a little, it can be uneven. So one of the ways that I do like to do it is I'll add some flux here. Get a little bit of the solder paste that I want to use. Come in with some hot air. And we're going to be using this ball solder spreader. And I'm going to be able to equally distribute. It's kind of hard to see because it was covered by all of that stuff, but you can see it's fairly equal. I'm just going to do this one more time. Come in with the hot air. This will warm up the board uniformly, and then with the solder blob on the end of this, I can deposit an equal amount of solder on all of those legs there. For all of the pads. And that's the benefit of having this type of a tip. Alright, now we'll turn our attention to the new port. As you can see, we've got a port that isn't damaged. So I will add some flux all over those pads, and we're going to pre-tin these. I'm going to come in with my iron, a little bit of solder on the tip there, and we're going to gently go over all of the the legs to this connector. And then we'll do the same on the inner row without melting the plastics or anything. And just like that, we've pre-tinned all of the legs. And then as we go back over and look at this, we can actually do a dry test real quick. You know what? Now that I'm looking at this, I actually realized that this one isn't the right one either. Oh, that's super frustrating. As you can see, these joints are practically in line with, or at least the middle, the bottom row here is in line with the middle of these pads. But if we look at the connector I got, the bottom row of the through holes is above the top row, this row of pins, so this is not the right connector. Bummer. I guess there's just going to be a part 2.